Om Ganativanandasya Ganangana Sarakya Chaksurun Minitam Yana Tashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam
Excessive.
Tam Samsidevam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Paritana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Larita Shibishikan Vitam Sam Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Dev Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabrahma Tashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutare Sayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swapanandikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chevarutimam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tito Jayadina Nishtapadeshu Badveshu Nityam Bhagata Sevya Bhagavati Utamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtahi Nigama Kapaturu Garitam Param Shukamakamita Javisamitam Vibata Bhagatam Rashamadhyam Mahora Horashika Vivibakam Krishna Swadama Bhagade Dhammagini Karonasta Dushamasha Paranako Dunodidam Dramapi Adabhishuta Bishudami Musam Apiari Varamperu Prakyai Dohara Adam Sanklation Urbanamusani Nandyanam Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimadi Bhakti Vedanta Shami Tinamane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivashes Sanivari Paskada Desarani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vindham Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hari Rama 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 Hari Hari. We begin a new week with Dr. Brent, John Malik, Manasa Ganga, Jean, and Rob on Zoom, as well as a number of people on Facebook who have not appeared in the comment section. I have to bring you up to date. We had the North American Leadership Conference on Zoom on Saturday, Sunday. I think 130 devotees joined, most of them temple presidents and departmental heads. There were a number of initiatives. Our own initiative was relevance, how to increase the relevance of ISKCON. We made a slideshow presentation, and I also did a half an hour breakout workshop, to which about 15 devotees attended. I was very impressed by the overall level of competence and maturity. There were some very, very great presenters, great topics, great graphic arts, great tools. I'm extremely heartened that ISKCON is coming of age. There are so many luminaries in the ISKCON sky that have huge, huge hopes for the spread of Krishna consciousness in the future. They want to have the next one in person. They want it to be physical and not cyber meeting. I don't know where that will be, and I doubt that I will expend the money to go there, but hopefully they'll have an online component as well. Another news bulletin is a dear friend of mine from Los Angeles who's been up here to Utah with his family many times. His son and daughter-in-law are beautiful singers. They've sung harmonium and bhajan at the Festival of India. I've known him. I had known him for 40 years. Many Ailawadi passed away recently. And I'm going down for his memorial service Thursday throughout the weekend. So I've been scheduled to give the talk in Spanish Fork in Salt Lake City, but we're going to go to Dr. Brent, who's already given 2 talks with slideshows, both of them very, very well presented, successful. And so I've invoked him, and he's very kindly agreed to give the talk this Saturday night in Salt Lake City, as well as Sunday in Spanish Fork, Utah. So, and also, of course, one other thing is that I'm going to do postering up in Logan and Brigham City, Ogden, for the Spanish Fork Festival of Colors, which is coming up pretty soon, about 10 weeks time. And so I'm going to go out there and shake the bushes, put posters up at the Beans and Brews, the Starbucks, the Jimmy John's, and whatever Einstein bagels have not yet closed their doors. I'll be spending the night. My good friends in the motel industry have given me a room, so I don't have to do the commute back. I'll be staying near the airport, and from the airport, I'll be leaving Thursday morning. So we won't have any Bhagavatam class on Tuesday or Wednesday. This will have to do for this week. Good morning. Bye, Bobby. She says, hearty well for Manny. What a great person Manny was. I'm already running through my mind the things to say about him at the memorial service. And one thing about Manny was he was a vice president in Xerox. His wife was vice president, Nisha. She's retired now, use aircraft down there in El Segundo. Very high-powered couple, high up in the corporate world. Movie star, good looking, extremely passionate about friends and family. They took very seriously the people that Krishna had sent into their lives. There was a fierce attachment and support for their son Vishal and daughter Ritu, and for their friends as well. And so I feel very fortunate that Mani counted me amongst his friends. He supported me. I don't think he would have stood by idly if anybody had said anything negative against me. He was like Krishna, and we're going to use that as a lead into today's show. Krishna is like Mani. Mani reflected that quality of Krishna, which is the most important quality of Krishna, which is his attachment to his devotees. Samaham sarvabhudashu navdvesha ye bhajanti tumam na teshu teshu bhaktam. Krishna says, I'm the father of all living beings. I love everyone equally. I'm not partial. And yet one who renders service unto me is a friend in me, and I am a friend in him. And that doesn't violate the principle of impartiality. A father may have two sons. One is perfectly in tune with the father, never disobeys the father, is never confrontational, never disrespectful to the father, never distant or remote, but always right there in purpose, in mind with the father. And so the father doesn't have to pull any superior tricks. He doesn't have to discipline the son. He doesn't have to act or even think of himself as a superior, because the son is, although younger in years, mature to the same level as the father. There's no higher or lower. They're both friends. The father and the good son are friends. But the bad son, on the other hand, disrespects the father, he disobeys the father. And the father loves the bad son just as much as he loves the good son, but he has to show that love in a different way. The behavior of the bad son obliges the father to sometimes raise his voice, to thunder like rain clouds, because the bad son will not listen to reason. He has to be more or less intimidated to do the right thing. And it's for his own good, because if he's left to his own devices, he'll play in traffic, he'll play with fire, he'll pick up snakes. Who knows what he'll do. When we say a bad son, we mean someone who doesn't know what's in his own best interest. He's his own worst enemy. And so the father tries to step between the son and his worst self, his dark self, to protect him from himself. And in order to do that, he has to appear oftentimes as a disciplinarian. He often has to chastise the son. He loves the bad son just as much as he loves the good son. It is said in the third canto of the Bhagavatam, Sakana Deshishana Subhadram Kamanta Bakina Hasayo Sarisam Siodanam Saruncharam Mangana Odanam Pasanam. Duryodhana was the bad son who conspired against the good son, Arjuna, on the advice of Karna, Dushasana, and Subal and Sakuni. Duryodhana, you might say, although he had plenty of impetus and motivation himself, but he was egged on, he was incited to go further, to do more sins than he might have done on himself because of the support of Karna, Dushasana, Subal. There might have been times when Duryodhana thought, well, I better not do that. That's too much of a crime. Murder, arson, kidnapping the wife. But then he thought, what do I have to worry? I've got, watching my back, I've got Bhisma, Dronacharya, I've got Karna, I've got Dushasana, I've got Sakuni. So because of the support which was given to him from these warriors, Duryodhana felt that he could do anything and get away with it. So therefore, this verse is Sakarna Subalana Subalanam Kamantra Bakena Hatayosaram. In the end, by following the advice of these aforementioned supporters, where did it get Duryodhana? It got him a place in the dust, in the dirt, in the mud of the battlefield, his thigh broken, unable to walk, surrounded by jackals and with vultures flying overhead. Now, the reason I quote this verse is Sakana Dishasana Sabana Kamandapkana Siodidam Saram Bangaram Ordananandashram. He lay with his hip broken. Nandanandanashram, the son of Nanda Maharaj, was not happy to see the scene. He was not happy to see the scene. He was not happy. He did not rejoice. He did not take any pleasure in seeing his bad son get his comeuppance, lying there in the dust, exactly where he deserved to be. Still, Krishna took no pleasure in that because he loved Duryodhana as much as he loved the Pandavas. And in fact, Duryodhana, by undergoing the suffering of ignominy and defeat and disgrace and seeing the loss of all of his supporters and family members, by the time he lay in the dust, Karna had been killed, Dushasana had been killed, Subala had been killed, Sakuni had been killed. All his supporters were gone. He had to face Bhima alone, and he lost that duel. He lost that contest. So he lived long enough to see his lifelong ambitions thwarted. He was cast down from the throne that he'd usurped into the dust, a dying man. And probably the reason he wasn't killed quickly was because Krishna promises his devotees that your enemies will live long enough to see you triumph. This is the ultimate twist of the knife. Yeah. The persons that Duryodhana has spent his whole life, all of his energy, conniving to kill, to disenfranchise. Krishna's arrangement was that he lived long enough to see them on the throne and recognize that he was in the dust. In spite of all of that, Krishna did not rejoice. Krishna took no pleasure in it at all. It was the way that he was obliged to behave towards Duryodhana because of Duryodhana's malfeasance. But when I think of Mani and his fierce attachment to his family members, as well as to his friends like myself and Bhai Baba, this gives us an insight. It gives us a window into the fierce protective feelings that Krishna has for his devotees. When devotees tuck themselves in under his sheltering wings, the Lord will move heaven and earth to keep them safe from harm. Speaking of sheltering wings, you may have heard me tell this story before, but in the 80s, there was a devastating fire in Yellowstone, or maybe it was the 90s. One of the worst fire ever in Yellowstone. Hundreds of thousands of acres were singed. After the fire had been put out, or run its course, I doubt any man-made instrument could put out a fire of that scope. Two rangers were sifting through the ashes and walking along, and they saw the petrified form of a bird with the wings spread out. She had been overtaken by the fire, and the fire was going so fast that it had petrified her. She was like a statue there. And they wondered why she hadn't taken flight. Many snakes and rodents, squirrels and all, possums, raccoons, they were all killed because they couldn't leave the ground and the fire was going 40, 50 miles an hour. But any bird, it's very rare that a bird would have been overtaken by the fire. All they had to do was flap their wings and fly above it. A fire does not per se represent much of a danger to birds. In the history of the world, you could probably count on the fingers of two hands how many birds got overtaken by fire. And here was this bird with the wings out, having been overtaken by the fire. Now, as the rangers looked at the sight and tried to discern what was the mystery behind it, while they watched, the little tiny chicklets started peeking out from underneath the wings. Is it safe? Can I come out yet? So that bird could have saved herself by flapping her wings and flying away from and above the fire. but her protective nature was so strong that she was more than happy to spread her wings to cover her little babies so that the fire would destroy her and pass over, and that her wings would provide insulation and protection against the fire, so that while she perished in such a way that her babies would survive. I felt that always from Mani, that fierce affection for his family members, number one, and for his friends, number two. Now, there's so many instances. The whole Srimad Bhagavatam is just one story after another, Krishna dropping everything to come to the rescue of his devotees. Hiranyakashipu got away with so many crimes. Killed Brahmins, destroyed sacrificial arenas, cast the demigods down to the lower planet, drove them into hiding, sat on the throne of India. It said that Hiranyakashipu was like a case of meningitis in the head of the universe. And the demigods thought that Krishna would have long ago intervened. Parijanaaya sadhanam vinashachadasya dharma samstam. Whenever there's a decline in religiosity and a rise in irreligion, I come to protect the devotees and destroy the miscreants. And so the demigods are saying, Lord, why haven't you come long time ago? Hiranyakashipu been doing this for decades. Nobody can perform a sacrifice. The demigods are in hiding. Why haven't you appeared by now? Says, I'm waiting. I'm not going to appear. Really, nothing's going to move me. There's only one thing that moves me like no other, and that is when he will harass my pure devotee, Prahlad, who's very peaceful, who feels such deep pleasure that he's not provoked by any external circumstances. Shashuta Mahatmane. Shashuta, even though he's a small child, he is a Mahatma. He is numbered amongst Pradada, Janaka, Bhishma, Bala, Vyasaki, but he is numbered among the 12 Mahajans, the 12 authorities in devotional service. And in fact, if you like slokas, if you like to pick juicy, relishable slokas, full and ripe with devotion, the 7th canto, the quotes of Prahlad Maharaj are unmatched. They're unexcelled in terms of suitable quotes for sharing with the Vaishnava community. When his father, the demonic Hiranyakashipu, finally gets out of control, gets so comfortable in his sovereignty and tyranny and despotism that he dares to harass his own 5-year-old son, then I'm going to kill him. No matter what the boons of Lord Brahma were. At that point, Krishna gets beside himself. He forgets himself. He forgets the vows that he may have taken or the vows that are involved. And he just like a mother, fiercely goes and kills that person who's harassing their offspring. So then Krishna says, I've been tolerant. I've held back. I've given him some leash, some latitude, some room. But when he starts to threaten my pure devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, that's it. That's the limit. That's the line in the sand. That's the straw that breaks the camel's back. Then I'm gonna kill him. And in fact, after the Lord came and stretched Hiranyakashipu on his lap and bifurcated him, garlanded himself with his intestines, he was going to destroy the whole universe. First, Indra was sitting on the throne. Then Hiranyakashipu defeated Indra and the demigods, and he was sitting on the throne. And then thirdly, after, or actually even during the time when Hiranyakashipu was being killed, Nrsimhadev, the half-man, half-lion, had then occupied the throne of Indra, stretched Hiranyakashipu across his lap, and bifurcated him. So as Hiranyakashipu's disemboweled corpse is lying face up on the lap of Hiranyakashipu, there's blood everywhere. He's gargling with his intestines. He's roaring so loud that everybody's like holding their ears so their eardrums don't break. And he's about to destroy the universe. He's so mad that others, like the demigods and great warriors and kings, stood aside while Prahlad Maharaj was being harassed. He thought, if there's no one in this universe who's willing to intervene on behalf of my devotees, then this universe isn't worth a fig. I'm just going to finish it up. It has no value. That's the thought process of the Supreme Lord. He's so fiercely attached to the safety and shelter of his devotees that in this case, when no one made a move, lifted a finger, they were all terrified of Hiranyakashipu. No one spoke up or intervened on behalf of Prahlad. He was isolated. He was the only devotee in a whole dynasty of demons. He was talked about, he was spat upon, he was disregarded, he was condescended to. There were multiple attempts on the part of his own father to kill him. And yet his father at one point said, Hiranyakashipu said, in spite of the fact that I've poisoned you, I've thrown you over a cliff, I've put you under the feet of a war elephant, thrown you into a pit of poisonous cobras, given you poison, you've survived all those attempts. And not only have you survived them, you don't seem in the least bit stressed. You're far more calm than I am, who am trying to kill you. Anupravashad yubat akutis bayam charam. Akutis means no matter what I've thrown at you, you're free from anxiety and fear. At this point, it starts to occur to Hiranyakashipu that maybe he's bitten off more than he can chew, that maybe now his life really is in jeopardy. Although he was safe, although he was able to do all kinds of atrocities for many years, now he's got some sort of an inkling that he's gone too far. He's pushed beyond suitable, allowable limits, and the noose is around his neck. So he says, where do you get your power from? How is it that you remain unscathed in spite of my attempts to kill you? And not only that, you have a smile on your face and you will not desist from chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. One might imagine that all Prahlad had to do to stop all these various attempts to kill him would be just to say, okay, Jad, I won't chant. How hard would that have been? I mean, he could have still chanted in private. He could have chanted silently. But his courage and faith in the protection of Krishna was of such a point. And he was just straight out up front. He says, no, I'm not going to stop chanting. You can do whatever you want to me, but nothing will stop me from chanting. And this, in fact, incited Hiranyakashipu to try and kill him in different more and more ingenious and lethal ways. And in spite of that, he was unable to not only not kill her, he was unable to kill Prahlad Maharaj, but he didn't even cause a ruffle in his feathers. And so he started to say, you seem immortal. You seem beyond the power of my abilities to kill you. Therefore, Hiranyakashipu, mitu bhavati me para. Maybe I will be killed instead of you. He, for the first time since he got the boons from Brahma, he's starting to realize that the Lord does not broach harassment of his devotees. The Lord will move heaven and earth to protect his devotees. And also in the third canto, when the four Kumaras got insulted, Jai and Vijay were just doing their jobs. They were the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, and their job was to keep out non-devotees. And the four Kumaras were non-devotees. They were impersonalists. They also were young boys. So it appeared to the doorkeepers that they were just wandering around lost. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know where they were going. They were actually great Vedic scholars, but that wasn't evident from the fact that they were in 6-year-old bodies wandering around naked. So the doorkeepers made a decision, and that's what doorkeepers do. They're supposed to keep out anyone they're not sure about. If you're a bouncer at a nightclub and you're making sure everyone's 18 years old, and you have someone comes up and they've got an ID which doesn't really have a likeness of them. It looks a little suspect. you can't afford to give them the benefit of the doubt. If you happen to let an underage person into your club, even if they had so-called ID, you could lose your job, the club could be set down. That's what doorkeepers do. They keep the obvious people out who are not eligible, but also they have to be quite conservative in their decisions. If there's any doubt that someone's underage, they have to prevent them from coming in. And that's in order to protect the integrity of the establishment that hires them. And so Jai and Vijay were just doing their jobs. And rather than take a chance and let these 4 naked boys in, they said, where's your mom? Where's your dad? What would any of us do if you saw 4 naked boys wandering around in the Walmart parking lot? You'd try to, Walmart says, shoes and shirt required. So your security, you're working for Walmart, and here's 4 naked boys. I mean, that's like, there's like 20 lawsuits I could think of, letting unaccompanied minors into the store, not 1, but 4, no shoes, no shirt, no pants. Jai and Vijay were just doing their job. They were doing it well, conscientiously. But, what they could not see was that the Kumaras were actually great, great devotees, and they had been impersonalists, but they had smelled Tashadavina Nayanasha Paradavinda Kanjaka Tadashi Makaran Anta Gata Shabivina Chakariksham Shankshaba Juta Justa Apichidatanbe. They had smelled the aroma of the tulsi leaves and the musk and sandalwood, which was wafting from the lotus feet of the Lord. And once that entered their nostrils, Shabivina Chakarashaksham, they had a complete renovation, they had a complete overhaul of heart. They turned towards devotional service. And at that point, they started for Vaikuntha to get the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. They wanted to find the source from which that maddeningly fragrant aroma was coming. So they also had their pure motives, and they had their bona fides and their credentials. It was a unavoidable confrontation. It was bound to happen. In fact, Krishna says, Eto surato gatim pradipadya sadya samriti samadhi sabhavra buyosha kashamupayasha sapo mayavinamastadavitano. Narayan came out to educate the dispute here. And he said that the 4 Kumaras, being upset, they had just cursed Jai and Vijay to take birth as demons in the material world. And at which point Narayan appeared on the scene, and everybody was upset. Jai and Vijay was like, we're just doing our jobs. We don't want to leave the service of the Lord. We don't want to become demons in the material world. And the 4 Kumaras were starting to think, maybe we overreacted a little bit. We're supposed to be saints. We know we're not this body. We shouldn't take offense to, bodily, what we perceive as bodily insults. Everybody was feeling a little bit chagrined, and Narayan came on the scene, and to his devotees, he said, don't worry, this was my arrangement. You didn't do anything wrong. I am going to descend in the material world, and I want to have some good fights. I want to create suspense and drama and action and adventure. I want this to be a Cecil B. DeMille production, and I chose you as my most trusted and faithful servants to precede me into the material world, to create havoc, and eventually be killed by me. And of course, one of those births of one of the doorkeepers was Hiranyakashipu, whose story I just finished telling. So he mollified the gatekeepers and told them they actually hadn't done anything wrong, that it was the arrangement of the Lord. But then he turned to the Kumaras and Yanamidya Shravanir Katarad Yad Pravanad Yadshmara Sadyo Bishavanayakate Kutapanaste Bhagavana Darshanam. No, that's not the verse. Shamitam Yasha Shavanaga Sadyapanadjika. So Hambavadya Shatir Chindam Shabahu Pradikudavitim. Chindam means cut, Bahu means arm. He turns to the Kumaras and he said, this is fine. This is fine. I know you're feeling a little like in the aftermath when you get taken over by anger and all those chemicals run through your body, and then the incident is over, and then you still got those chemicals and you just don't feel very good. You feel kind of nauseous and sick, like you've got the flu. So the Kumaras are sitting there a little ashamed of what they've done. And Krishna, in fact, tells them, Etu Sarato Gatim Pradipadisadam. These are my devotees. It's not a very healthy policy to go around cursing devotees. They're going to take birth as three births as demons in this material world. And they're going to be very intimately connected with me in the meditation of anger. They're going to think of me 24/7 in a mood of anger, and thus they're never going to forget me. And your part in it was essential. You also, as they played their part, you played their part. I choreographed this disagreement, this misunderstanding. But let me just tell you this. You don't have to take it too seriously, because now you're my pure devotees and you merit the same level of fierce protection that Jai and Vijay did. So don't worry. You've come under my shelter and you're just as inviolable as they are. But let me tell you, and through you, give a warning to anybody who reads these pages. It's not a very healthy practice to go around cursing devotees of the Lord. In fact, if I, he says, if I am myself, Yanamati Ashra, if there's someone who's chanting Yanamati Shravanirkanam, chanting my glories, hearing and remembering me, chanting, hearing, and remembering Yashmarikadim, and Nami, and through that process of hearing and chanting, he's become purified and free from all their sins and has developed attachment to me. If I should insult consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or accidentally, if I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the object of their worship, should somehow or other take for granted, minimize their devotion for me, and somehow or other by an action of one of my bodily limbs were to insult or offend such a devotee, then I would on the spot, Chintam Shubahu, I would cut off that arm. If it was my left arm or right arm, whichever appendage of mine, appendage would have offended a pure devotee, I would not hesitate to cut off my own arm. This is the fierceness with which the Lord holds his devotees inviolable. And that's the quality that I always noticed in Mani. Very well-to-do, big, responsible position in a well-known worldwide multinational corporation. Same thing for his wife, Nietzsche, who, by the way, is just as fiercely devoted. They had that in common. Movie star, handsome, great kids, great house, great job. I felt so fortunate throughout the 40 years that I knew him to be the recipient of his friendship, which was not lukewarm, not remote, was fierce, intimate. That's how Krishna feels for his devotees. In the case of Ambarish Maharaj, Krishna was so protective of Ambarish Maharaj that he gave Ambarish Maharaj his own weapon of personal protection. The Sudarshan Chakra is one of two weapons that the Lord uses to counteract the attacks of the demons and then to kill them. The Gada, the club, and the Sudarshan Chakra. The Gada he used with Hiranyakashipu's brother, Hiranyaksha, to dispatch him. The Sudarshan Chakra he used with Sisupal. When Sisupal was threatening the Lord and attacking him, he used the Sudarshan Chakra with Sisupal. He used it with Salva. He used it for his own personal protection, but the Lord considers that the protection of his devotees is more important than his own personal protection. So he gave his Sudarshan Chakra to Maharaj Ambarish. The Lord is always pictured. You ever see a picture of Vishnu? He's got the lotus flower. He's got the conch shell for the devotees, and for his enemies and for his self-protection, he's got the disc and he's got the club. So he subordinated his own protection. He gave one of the two items that he uses for his own protection. He gave it to Maharaj Ambarish. That Sudarshan Chakra was not with Vishnu, by God's arrangement and by God's preference, that Sudarshana Chakra was with Maharaj Ambarish in his palace 24/7. And when Durvasa conjured up this fire weapon, and it was a huge, huge demon, you can imagine, flames licking everywhere, teeth, blazing yellowish eyes. His hair was here and there, and his hair was flames. And he was single-mindedly focused on burning Maharaj Ambarish to a crisp. And he only had a few steps to go. Ambarish had come back from taking his bath. Durvasa had come back from taking his bath. Ambarish had come out to greet him. They were only a few steps away from each other. So the fire demon only had to take, it's like a, basketball layup. You can't go more than a step and a half without having the ball hit the floor. And so you see some of these big, long, 7-foot tall guys, they take one step, which is like 15 feet, and then they take another step. And before their foot comes down the second time, they go way up in the air and they slam the ball through the hoop. So you can imagine this big demon, he was huge, and his step encompassed, who knows how many feet, 20, 30, 40 feet. So he'd taken one step, and then he's up in the air, and he's about to do a slam dunk. He's about to envelop Ambarish Maharaj, burn him to a crisp, just like Hiranyakashipu tried to burn his own son to a crisp. And the Sudarshan Chakra did not have to come from far away, did not have to come all the way from Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. If it had to, it would have in less than a second, but it did not have to. It was standing by right in the palace of Ambarish Maharaj. And in that fraction of a second, which it would have taken the demon to leap like fire. You see, fire leaps when there's a forest fire. The fire will leap 30, 40, 50 feet. Sometimes it'll leap over a house, leaving it untouched. It'll leap over a tree, leaving it untouched, and burn everything on the other side. So you can imagine this fire demon, he took one step, and then he launched himself, and the Sudarshana Chakra was already right there. It didn't have to come from anywhere. It was already right there. And that Sudarshana Chakra not only stonewalled, not only stopped dead in its tracks, the impetus, the momentum of this powerful demon, but the Sudarshana Chakra began to burn more hotly than that fire weapon. That was a weapon specifically conjured up out of the fire element. Can't imagine how hot it was. But the fire of the Sudarshana Chakra does not derive its heat from any material source. It is a transcendental fire. It has many, many times more power than the fire of the sun or any electricity or electric chair or power grid or anything. So the mystic power of Ambarish, as impressive as it was, didn't stand a chance when it confronted the supernatural, spiritual Sudarshan Chakra of Lord Krishna. That weapon of Ambarish was destroyed in the snap of a finger. And then Ambarish, who just a minute before had been so confident and so arrogant, who does this guy think he is? He disregards his guests. He is only a king in name. He's actually a low-class man. From all of that self-confidence and condescension and holier than thou, all of a sudden, Durvasa Muni is like, he goes pale. He can't believe what he's seen. That Sudarshan Chakra now, having dispatched his own, coming towards him, and within a second, he's struck with terror. He began to run here and there and here and there to Brahma, to Shiva, to Vishnu, in a state of total terror. Krishna had, in the fierce spirit of protection for his devotees, struck Durvasa Muni with terror, just as he had struck Hiranyakashipu with terror, just as he always strikes those who would harass his devotees with terror. Jagai, Madai, the list goes on and on and on and on. So Kunti Dev once said, the sun may one day grow cold, the moon may one day become hot. Those are unlikely, right? We can't imagine. But she says it's more likely that the sun will grow cold and the moon will grow hot than it is that Krishna will ever abandon his devotees in their time of their need. And that's why the last words of the Bhagavad Gita, which are the most important points that Krishna wants to make, are Sarvadhamam Parijara Mamekam Saraham Tam Sarva Mokshayasam. Abandon all varieties of duties and just surrender to me. You surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything comes. You water the root of the tree, and then everything else is taken care of. All we have to do in our lives is increase the level of our surrender to Krishna, our attachment to Krishna, and our consequent detachment from the things of this world. And if society condemns us, if our parents censor us, if people call us fools or misguided or deluded, doesn't matter. If Krishna approves us, doesn't matter if the whole world disapproves us. If Krishna is for us, our question is, if Krishna is for you, who dare be against you? So those are our thoughts, which we're more than honored to share with our esteemed guests on Facebook here on this Monday morning. And as I said, I'll be out of station Tuesday and Wednesday in northern Utah doing posters to drum up some attendees for our color festival. In fact, based on the posters I've already been doing, when I have some free time to go out, we've had several $1,000s worth of sales already and a couple $1,000s worth of vendor sign up. So it seems like there's a lot of anticipation. Last year we had 20,000 people over 2 days. The weather was perfect. So depending on the weather, we expect another landmark year for the chanting of Hare Krishna, distribution of prasadam, and the purification of people in general here of the Utahns. So towards that end, towards the goal of getting the word out, leaving no stone unturned, I'll be up in probably Logan, Ogden, Clearfield, Roy, Layton, going to the Beans and Brews and the Starbucks coffee shops, the Jimmy John's sandwich shops, and the Einstein's Bagels, putting up posters for the next 2 days. So I don't think in all of that I'll be able to prepare for and give some classes. And so this will have to suffice for the week. And I won't be back Monday either. I'll still be in Los Angeles Monday. So maybe until next Tuesday that we can have our class again. Thanks so much for those emojis. Ajita, who actually does our social media advertisement for the Festival of Colors, gave a wonderful seminar on social media at the North American Leaders Convention yesterday. And he said, engage. That's the secret. You know, when you go on Facebook, the whole idea is to get people to engage. And then Facebook notices that and promotes you, and you go up and up and up. So thank you very much for those hearts, for those thumbs up. Thank you for your comments. If you're on Facebook listening to this and you haven't said Haribol or given us a like or thumbs up, it's not going to cost you anything. It'll be your service for the morning to give some thumbs up and get some action going on the site. And that way, more and more people, there's a greater likelihood of more and more people ending up giving oral reception to our narrations of the Lord and his devotees. We've got John Malik states the obvious: materialistic people are less happy than spiritualist people. That is true, and it's not just our opinion. Many, many psychological studies have verified that. Bhakti Gary, thanks very much for joining us. Bye, Bobby. Haribol for Mani. She knows Mani, and she knows what I'm talking about in terms of his wonderful qualities. Gene, hardly ever missed a class in the last 3 years. That's called consistency. Manisha Ganga. Brent, I'm going to leave everything in your hands on Saturday and Sunday, and I know that you'll give a really good presentation. I'll have to find some arrangement of leaving this computer for your utilization. I won't be here when you come to do work on Thursday or Friday, so I'll make arrangements with Vai Bobby to have it powered up and available. And that's it. That's it for Motivational Monday, except for Rob is there, and Rob always lets us end on an upbeat with his sayings. Did you have any for us this morning, Rob?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I was able to gather a few.
Excellent. Do you want to share them with us? You might have muted yourself some or other.
I did. Hare Krishna. Okay, here we go. A devotee gains favor for his loving behavior.
Mm.
Krishna's heart is won by the actions of the devoted one.
Mm-hmm.
And the sun will go cold before Krishna's favor for devotees grows old.
I like number 1 and 3 especially. Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to post them today so that everybody else can take note of them, put them in their notebooks if they will. How are you doing, Rob? Otherwise, everything good?
There's stresses that happen in life, but we get through them by turning to Krishna. So that's what I'm striving to do.
Great. Were you there on Saturday night when Ishan gave his talk?
Yes, Prabhuji. I was able to hear that whole lecture. It was very well done.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And what was the crowd like that time?
It was a little bit sparser crowd, not as big as usual, but it was still a good crowd.
Great, great. Yeah, we've got great hopes for Salt Lake City. Great team of devotees there. I was kind of feeling during the North American Leadership Conference that I dropped the ball by not making Govinda Dev and Sundari Priya and yourself aware of that conference. But it's all recorded, and so I'm gonna give you those links and everything. And I think you guys are taking the initiative and leading up there in Salt Lake City would be immensely benefited by some of the material. And I'll make sure to let you know when it's available so you can tap into it. Anyway, I'll look forward to getting those by email and posting, and I will be posting your comments, and starting from tomorrow early, I will be postering, and I'll be back with you next Tuesday. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.